Hey everyone, my name is Rachel, and since I discovered the wacky world of Debi Pearl and her created to be a helpmeet book, I've been hunting for a copy of one of her other books called To Train Up a Child. And by which I mean a copy that I didn't have to pay for because I don't want to give money to these monsters. Turns out this book was written more by her husband, Michael Pearl, than her, but she has a couple of little chapters in it, so, you know, all the money's going in the same pot anyway. His pocket. Seriously though, I do not want to pay this woman any cash, and you will see why very soon. Or this man. I don't want to pay this man any cash either. Like I said, you'll see why very soon. So I had to look around all over the place. I was trying to find like a torrent of this book, couldn't do that. I found no cheap second-hand copies, at least none that I could like get in time. And yeah, it turns out there was a copy right under my nose the entire time. I found this article which discusses how the deaths of several children had been linked to this book. And, I mean, seriously, it's disgusting, and we'll discuss that at the end of this video. And at the end of the article, there was a link to an archived page of a blog which had the entire text of this book on it. So I was like, yes! So thank you to the person who wrote that article. Thank you to whoever archived this blog page. You saved me giving money to monsters, so I really appreciate that. So today we're going to be discussing one of the worst, most disgusting, dangerous books I've ever read from the creator of No Greater Joy Ministries. So this book is How to Train Up Your Child by Michael and Debi Pearl. Now, as a warning, this video will probably be quite long because I am going to try and cover the whole book. I'm skipping out some chapters, but there's just so much I want to talk about here, and it's crazy and it's ridiculous. So as a helper to you guys, I'm going to leave some timestamps in the description and probably as a pinned comment below, so you can skip forward to bits that you think might interest you, and skip over bits that you don't really care about that much. Now, before we even start, I am going to kind of offer a little bit of a disclaimer and say that I'm not a mother myself. I know, I look too young, but I could have had several kids by this point. But no, I'm not a mother, I've never raised a child, I honestly don't know how difficult it is. The closest I've got is like looking after my nephew while my brother and sister-in-law have been right there with me. So I have no idea what the best way to raise a child is. However, as a regular human being with a heart and compassion and empathy for others, and you know, a desire not to hurt people, I can say without a doubt that the content of this book is horrific, and I urge everyone, especially parents, not to follow it. So this is the opening paragraph to the book, and I think it's written by Michael, and honestly it's not as extreme as it could be, but I think that's because you kind of need to ease people into your world before you start telling them how big of a branch to hit their children with, you know? He writes, "This book is not about discipline nor problem children. The emphasis is on the training of a child before the need to discipline arises." To be honest, while I have critiqued the use of the word train to talk about children before, that aside, I kind of agree with this, you know? If you raise your kids well, most of the time you won't have behavioural problems to fix later, you know? Of course, that's easier said than done, but it is still a good point to take note of. Coming back to the word train though, to me this is a word you use for dogs and athletes and for teaching children how to use a toilet, right? It's about giving rules and ways of doing things and getting the trainee to repeat what you're looking for. I mean, I don't know, maybe you guys see it differently, but that's kind of what training is to me. In the long term, you don't train children, you raise children. Unless it's something specific like toilet training, it's more about raising a kid. You're teaching them certain things, but mostly you're teaching them how to think about things, how to react to things. You're teaching them to think for themselves, and you're shaping these little individuals. And I feel there's a big difference in raising a child and training a child. And I just can't help but think if you go into parenting wanting to train children, you're going in with the wrong attitude. But that's just me as an outsider looking in. Interestingly though, he completely proves my points literally a few paragraphs later when he writes, "Training does not necessarily require that the trainee be capable of reason. Even mice and rats can be trained to respond to stimuli. Careful training can make a dog perfectly obedient. A dog can be trained not to touch a tasty morsel laid in front of him. Can't a child be trained not to touch?" And so on. So there's a lot of this comparing children to dogs and animals and so on, because, you know, who wants to raise an independent human being who can think for themselves, you know? Who wants to raise someone who understands the consequence of their actions? when instead you can have a child who just knows how to say, yes sir, no sir, and only does what you say and never questions why. Why would you want a child who thinks for themselves when you can have someone who never bothers to question motives or reason? He goes on then to compare toddlers, children and teenagers to, and this is just a few of the things, horses, soldiers, mules and just wild animals in general. And then he moves on to some specific examples. He writes, there is so much satisfaction in training up a child. It is easy and challenging. When my children were able to crawl, in the case of one, roll around the room, I set up training sessions. Try it yourself. Place an appealing object where they can reach it, maybe in a no-no corner or in an apple juice table. When they spy it and make a dive for it and a calm voice say, no, don't touch it, they will already be familiar with the no. So they will pause and look at you in wonder and then turn around and grab it. Switch their hand once and simultaneously say no. Remember, you are not disciplining, you are training. One spat with a little switch is enough. They will again pull back their hand and consider the relationship between the object, their desire, the command, and the little reinforcing pain. It may take several times, but if you are consistent, they will learn to consistently obey, even in your absence. So to summarise, because this was quite a long little paragraph here, to summarise, 1. Set up a trap for your children. Find something they love, place it where they can see it, and where they will obviously want to go grab it. Sometimes, maybe even entice them towards the object. Say, come on little child, come touch this thing that you like so much. Step 2. When your child obviously goes to grab it, you know, it's something they love in an obvious place, when they go to grab it, hit the child. Just to summarise these 2 steps. 1, set up a situation so you can hit your child. 3, get satisfaction from the experience. Now, I'm not a parent. I'm not perfect. I'm not some moral authority. But even I know this cannot be normal or healthy. I mean, sure, teaching your child to listen to you, teaching them to understand the word no, that's fair enough. That's brilliant. Setting up traps and tricks and training scenarios feels a little bit too far. Setting those up so you can hit your child and teach them a lesson, that just doesn't quite seem normal to me. Especially when they're at an age where they can't even walk yet. That is insane. Literally insane. And he then tries to justify this with the whole, but God did it by placing the tree in the middle of the Garden of Eden. And then he goes on a long rant about, God did this and God did this and God set traps, so we should too for our children. I mean, well, if God is into entrapment as an excuse to hurt people to teach them a lesson, then it must be okay, right? He tries to make the argument here, right, saying, by your enforcement, your children are learning about moral government, duty, responsibility, and in the event of failure, accountability, rewards, and punishment. In the here and now, they are also learning not to touch, which makes a child's social life a lot more pleasant. Really? Because they aren't even old enough to walk yet, never mind understand what moral government is. All you're teaching them is, they touch something, you hit them. You're not teaching them about right and wrong, you're teaching them to be scared of you. They aren't going to understand why they shouldn't touch. All they're going to know is if they do touch, you will hit them because you are mean and nasty and bigger than them and you have power over them. You can physically hurt them if they touch an object that looks nice. They don't understand why touching that object is wrong. They just know that if they do it, they're going to get hurt. That's not teaching them about morals, that's teaching them obedience through fear. And I've got to say, I don't think that can lead to a very psychologically healthy kid. I mean, he even acknowledges this, right? He says, through this process of association, the child will involuntarily recall the pain every time he hears the word no. And of course, if you thought hitting crawling babies was bad, just know that this couple does not discriminate by age. Even newborns can experience pain, and this must be exploited. In one section, Michael here writes about his angel of a wife by saying, one particularly painful experience of nursing mothers is the biting baby. My wife did not waste time finding a cure. When the baby bit, she pulled hair. An alternative has to be sought for bald-headed babies. Understand, the baby is not being punished, just conditioned. A newborn baby and you just pull its hair when it bites because it doesn't know any better. Michael even writes that children are, and in his words, never too young to be hit. Trained. Never too young to be trained. He even argues that, and again his words, a newborn soon needs training, and at just 10 months old, a child who doesn't immediately come when he's called should be lightly spanked and lectured. 10 months! Apparently, in teaching their 4-month-old child not to crawl up the stairs, they would hit her bare legs with a 12-inch long switch, 1/8 of an inch in diameter, made from a willow tree. Reading this stuff literally sickens me. And, you know, if you didn't think this was bad enough, here's a reminder of what a 4-month-old child looks like. And this is the sort of thing they were hitting that child with on bare skin. Seriously, this child got hit for being a child, wanting to explore the world around it, wanting to learn about its surroundings, want to test its limits and boundaries. Is not old enough to know that they might fall down the stairs and get hurt if they crawl too high. It's your job as a parent to keep them safe, not to beat them for getting into a normal situation. And that's just chapter 1. Chapter 2 talks about a lot of Bible stuff and like, when do children become sinners? When do they become aware of their sin? That kind of stuff. A lot of Bible quotes in that, but that's not really what I want to focus on with this video. Chapter 3 is focused primarily on telling parents who don't follow this book that they're bad parents. This includes little segments like saying, you know, if parents are ever angry with their kids, it is because, and I quote, you don't like them. It is impossible to like a whining, selfish, self-centered, spoiled brat. Lovely. And I should clarify here, they're not talking about some like, you know, spoiled, sulky 17-year-old who takes advantage of his parents. They're referring to regular kids. They could be anywhere from like a newborn to like 7 or 8 years old. And if those kids ever misbehave, if they ever cry, if they're ever upset, Michael here labels them self-centered, spoiled brats. And he goes on, he says, and why is your child unlikable? You made him that way. Great way to just guilt parents into following whatever you're teaching in this book. Chapter 4 gets a little bit weird. At one point they write stuff like, the feelings of a child are just as important and sacred as those of an adult. Always treat your children with respect. Never ridicule, mock, or laugh at your child's ideas, creations, or ambitions. And damn, that is some good advice right there. They talk about how kids should be able to come to their parents for advice with problems. Yeah, they should. They talk about, you know, getting involved in your child's interests. They talk about supporting your children. It's brilliant. But here's the thing. If you can sit down and talk about how you should respect the fact that your child is into trains, or bears, or painting, or dancing, why can't you respect your child enough to not use physical violence as a motivator? Just a question. Again, there's a few bits about encouraging your child, you know, spending time with them, understanding them, which honestly, it isn't all that bad. This is one pretty decent chapter. It's just the rest of the book that's horrific. They ruin it all again with chapter 5, which is simply titled, The Rod. Seriously, I'm not joking here. It opens with this little anecdote, which reads, I observed a child possessed of continual discontent. His mother was vainly trying to elicit obedience to a simple command. He was miserable, constantly complaining, whining, and angry. The mother, made miserable by the little tyrant's rebellious antics, was ill-tempered towards him, but she continued to plead with him as if she were trying to remember what it was she heard about positive affirmation and not stifling his personal expression. As an objective observer, concerned for the child's happiness and well-being, I said to the mother, why don't you give him a spanking and make him happy? The shocked mother replied, oh, he'll grow out of it, it's just a stage he's going through. Now, as I've said, I'm not a parent, right? And I'm not an expert, and I don't know how the mother should have handled this situation, but I have to say, the advice, why not spank him and make him happy, seems like a huge oxymoron. Huge! Now, I'll be honest, if I was ever out with my nephew or my future dog, and a stranger came up to me and said, maybe you should spank him, I would be way more likely to hit the stranger than the child or dog. It's weird. I don't care how much a child is misbehaving, I can't find any justification for using violence against someone who is so much smaller than me, so much more defenseless than me, and who can't do anything to stop me or get out of that situation. Especially if it was like a newborn baby. Like, who can seriously justify pulling the hair of a newborn baby? They don't know what they're doing, they don't know any better, they don't know right from wrong, they can't even fully process what you're doing to it. I don't understand how anyone can find any justification for violence against a child. And I can't believe I even have to say this. In this paragraph here that I'm putting on screen right now, they talk about how if a parent doesn't want to beat their child, it means that they hate their child. And the reason for this? Some Bible quote. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't feel comfortable physically hurting a human being who is smaller than me and younger than me. Well, clearly I just don't understand love. I don't understand my own feelings. I don't understand what a child really needs. It's pain. And clearly, I just don't understand the authority of God. How dare I try and use empathy and kindness instead of blindly following a Bible? I'm such a monster, aren't I? Then they go on and give a bunch of Bible quotes about how not only is it okay, but it's encouraged to beat your children. Because, hey, it won't kill them. No, it just, mentally and sometimes physically scars them for life. Whatever. Doesn't matter if your kids live in a state of constant fear. They can get over that and just do it to their own kids in the future. That's what God wants. They go on to call parents who don't want to inflict pain on their children emotionally weak, insecure, and naive, to name a few. Apparently, parents who read academic articles which show the damage that physical abuse, training can do to your children, apparently those parents are simply giving in to peer pressure. Apparently they're just simply being shamed into ignoring the Bible, which has just been villainized by the latest propaganda. You call it propaganda, I call it psychological research. What are you gonna do? I know, this kind of reminds me of the time when people tried to claim that slavery was wrong, and everyone knows slavery is okay because it says it in the Bible. I mean, the Bible even gives clear instructions on how to look after your slaves, how to beat your slaves, what to do with them and stuff, so it has to be okay, right? All these people trying to claim that owning a person dehumanizes them, they're brainwashed sheep, they're giving in to peer pressure. We just need to follow the Bible, okay? They go on and tell this story. Recently, a mother told us that after cracking down on her children with a consistent use of the rod, one child thanked God for making his mama sweeter. I'd like to see some proof this actually happened, please. They go on and try and claim that beating your children is natural, and even when children know they've done wrong, apparently beating them will help them, because apparently, and I quote, "By nature, the child innately knows he deserves punishment for his moral failure. A spanking, whipping, paddling, switching, or belting is indispensable to the removal of guilt in your child. His very conscience demands punishment." So, by his nature, he's demanding punishment so he can stop feeling guilty. Got it. So anytime he does anything wrong, if he feels bad about it afterwards, he's asking to be hit with a stick. Got it. I'm so glad this book is here to explain to me the psychology of children, because I would not have got this without the book. It just doesn't seem obvious, does it? But I guess it does make sense, because when your newborn baby accidentally bites because they don't know any better, he's clearly gonna feel guilt, right? This little 2-day-old thing is clearly gonna feel guilt, and by pulling their hair, you're actually helping alleviate that guilt from the child. You're helping relieve them of that horrible feeling. So by pulling the 2-year-old's hair, you're doing them a favour. Makes sense. They go on to write, "I observed a small child who, upon being caught in misdeed, turned her backside to the parent, pulled her diaper down, and gave herself 3 slaps on the bare bottom. The offering, though cute, was not accepted." Okay, 1, that's not cute. 2, pretty sure that's not normal or healthy behaviour in a child. They also try and claim that beating is not as bad as some other punishments. In one story, they talk about a misbehaving young boy who is punched or made to sit in a corner or sometimes put in a dark closet. Sitting in a corner, he was heard to say, "Nobody likes me, I'm as bad as the devil, I never do anything right." Dark corners and dark closets breed darkness in the soul. An empty room and a pouting child incubates guilt and anger. Only the rod and reproof bring correction. Somehow children know the rod is just their due. I think all of these punishments sound horrific. Don't try and claim you're better than them just because you only beat your child. They even go as far to say, do you comfort your children with a rod? If you have not seen the rod as a comfort to your child, you have missed its purpose. And now chapter 6, in which we learn exactly how to use the rod to train a child. When the time comes to apply the rod, take a deep breath, relax, and pray. Lord, make this a valuable learning session. Cleanse my child of ill temper and rebellion. May I properly represent your cause in this matter. No joking around, no raised voice. The child should be able to anticipate the coming of your rod by your utterly calm and controlled spirit. Ah yes, there's nothing like cold, calm, calculated, and premeditated assault against a child. Apparently, even if your child decides to do the right thing and make up for their misbehaviour, you cannot back out now, you have to beat them. Apparently he should come submissively to his beating, but if the child does run away in fear from an adult several times bigger than him, coming towards him with a large stick or branch to beat him with, apparently you should, and I quote, use whatever force is necessary to bring him to bay. If you have to sit on him to spank him, then do not hesitate, and hold him there until he is surrendered. Prove that you are bigger, tougher, more patiently enduring, and are unmoved by his wailing. Defeat him totally. Accept no conditions for surrender, no compromise. You are to rule over him as a benevolent sovereign. Your word is final. Now, so far, I've tried to be sarcastic about this book to show how ridiculous it is, but honestly, reading this sickens me. Seriously, prove you're bigger and tougher than him. Use whatever force is necessary. Sit on him and spank him. Defeat him totally. You shouldn't talk about a child or any human being like this. It's revolting. But apparently it's okay because Michael here has found that 5 to 10 licks are usually sufficient when beating your child, so I guess it's not that bad. And they go on about never using your hand to hit your kid. You always have to use an instrument like a rod, a belt, a switch. They write, any spanking to effectively reinforce instruction must cause pain, but the most pain is on the surface of bare skin where the nerves are located. A surface sting will cause sufficient pain with no injury or bruising. And the specifics get even worse. I'm just gonna warn you, this is disturbing, right? Select your instrument according to the child's size. For the under 1-year-old, a little 10 to 12 inch long willowy branch, stripped of any knots that might break the skin, about 1/8 inch diameter is sufficient. Sometimes alternatives have to be sought. A 1-foot ruler or its equivalent in a paddle is a sufficient alternative. For the larger child, a belt or larger tree branch is effective. What sort of person puts this much thought into what kind of tool is best to beat a child with? Not even a child, a baby. Just gonna throw this out there. This is what an under 1-year-old looks like. This is the kind of child they are proposing hitting with a 10 to 12 inch long willow branch. And for older children, use a tree branch. A flippin' tree branch. Oh, it's hard not to swear at this, and you know how I feel about swearing. My God. And does anyone else see the creepiness of their goal being to inflict the most amount of pain, but not leave any bruising or signs of injury? Like, this might just be me, but this screams more about the parents not wanting to get caught than it does about them caring about the child's well-being. It's just... it is insane. It is literally insane. Okay, this video is getting super long now, and I didn't think it was going to be this long, so I am going to end this here and post part 2 tomorrow, in which we're going to talk about the damage that this book has done to actual real-life children. We're going to talk about the end of this book with some, like, training examples and so on, and they have some weird, warped ideas about Barbie dolls and toys and homeschooling. We're going to get into that in the next video. Sorry this has been long. Like I say, I'll leave some timestamps below. In the meantime, let me know what you think of this. Let me know what you think about their insane ideas about hitting 4-month-old babies and pulling the hair of newborns, and it's horrific, isn't it? I can't believe this. Seriously, the full text for this book I will leave in the description down below. It's like an archived blog webpage type thing, but from what I can tell it is the full book, so you can read that if you want. I must warn you, it's pretty horrific, and I don't really like trigger warnings, but I've got to say, if you have any like emotional issues around child abuse or like being hit or things like that, just be very careful when you're reading it, because it's horrific. But for now I'm going to leave this here, and I will see you tomorrow for the next part of this video. But for now, thank you so much for watching today. I really do appreciate it. Sorry this was a long and really horrific video, but hopefully I'll see you again soon. If you like this video and you want to hear me talk more about sciencey stuff, you can check out the Here and How podcast, which I host with Rationality Rules and Holy Kool-Aid. But for now, I just want to say an extra special thank you to everyone who is supporting me on Patreon this month. You guys are incredible. A special thank you goes out to Gambit and his Chauffeur, Mark Dauner, Eric Reid, Christian Berg, Rachel B. Royer, Religion is BS, Matthew Meinema, Jaylee Moore, Sir Michael Moore, Jadeon Sheppard, Greg Ladd, and Pizelated Skeptic. Also go check out everyone who is listed down in the description and on the video end screen here. You guys are all amazing, and I cannot thank you enough.